Oh, but I'm not going to say that the recent attempt...
Stop. I'm still watching the car chase on
I
the
know.
TV.
Turn the car chase off.
I'll turn the volume down, but I'm not turning the car chase off.
I mean, it is just like...
You always complain about how distracting it is when we do a show and we're watching car chases.
I'm not
It's
joking.
awesome.
I'm getting PTSD watching this.
Why?
Even though I didn't see the dudes wearing long dicky shorts and knee-high socks trying to steal my truck.
Yeah.
So here's the question.
Have they come back yet?
No, but they're going to. I know they are. And even though I've got my Igla and my CompuStar alarm installed now, and it's...
And your club?
And it's
Don't forget your club.
No, it's funny because Brandy, my wife, asked me to put in... She's like, why don't you get a club? I'm like, seriously, the club?
Yeah, but it'll slow them down.
It's all going to slow them down.
I know, but think of how much...
Here's the thing. They're not going to get the truck. Like, they would have to flatbed it out of my front yard.
Don't give them any ideas.
No, I'm not. But look... I have legitimate PTSD, and I know that other people do too who this has happened to. They didn't get the truck, so I'm so thankful they didn't get it. And I listen, if you've listened to the last couple episodes, you're probably like, oh, seriously, Lightning, on and on about this freaking attempted theft. But it sucked balls, and I don't want it to happen again.
Know that it did do that.
And so
hopefully that's a metaphor.
It is a metaphor.
Okay.
They're going to come back, and they're going to break that freaking sliding rear window again.
Okay, so then you need to put a sign.
Here's my question.
Put a sign in the back of your bed for when it's parked that says, this vehicle is equipped with all these things.
So the alarm guy said, don't do that.
And then say, please don't steal it.
They're not.
And then also say,
they're not going to read that.
May God be with you.
No, I'm not going to do that either.
Why?
Someone said put a little white decal of a gun. Or
no, it's going to make them want it because they're going to think you have a gun safe in there.
I don't know. But so here's the question. Is there any way I can prevent them from busting that little tiny 1 foot square window? Is there some protective film that I don't know about? And I started looking it up.
Yeah, because I suggested that. I sent you some links.
I looked at them.
And you're like, they'll still shatter.
That's the thing. So most of them, that stuff goes on the inside of the window and it shatters, but it
keeps you from making a mess.
That's fine, but I'm not really worried about the mess. I'm worried about the broken window and a 6-week back order on windows again.
Well, they won't be 6 weeks forever.
If the theft keeps going,
they'll make
this
more.
on Ram trucks, they'll make more.
You're good.
Says who? You don't work at Mopar.
Because if Mopar has demand, they're going to start ramping up production.
Maybe
they're making
won't.
money. No, that's not true.
They don't
will.
make the truck anymore.
Yes, they do.
I know it's the
Ram 1500 window. The window's no different on the new one as it is on yours.
Listen, is there a film that I can put on the outside that when they come with their little punch tool, it bounces right off? Nothing.
Well, I mean, unless you want to get like a bulletproof glass from an armored Ram, probably cost you $15,000, but it would keep that rear window from shattering. I mean, listen, how committed are you to keeping that window together?
Pretty damn committed.
All right.
I don't know if I would put in I guess I would have to see if they make one, and how much it costs.
Okay.
It's just that sucked.
Yeah. It sucks.
Do I just sound like a whiner?
Do you think it was the loud exhaust?
Should I just shut up about this? Should I not talk about this topic anymore?
Truckshowpodcast@gmail.com.
Are you guys tired of hearing about this? All right, I'm not. You know what? I feel like
let's talk about happy talk.
I feel like I've overdone this topic. I'm moving on.
You're not because the second you have some other thing, you're going to bring it up.
We have to talk about CompuStar at some point soon.
Yes. All right. I was at the California Overland Show this weekend and had the 392 on display. Mm-hmm. And
did they bust your rear window trying to get in?
No, I had it open so that they could look inside.
Oh, okay.
It was open all weekend long. Had a couple, actually several listeners come up who...
Did they think you were Lightning?
No. They said, oh, dude, I love your podcast. And I was like, what? Really? So I thought that was pretty cool. In fact, one of the guys, you may remember, he owns a local pizza spot in San Pedro, and he said, hey, I would love for you and Lightning to come have a slice on me.
He said that again or originally?
No, again.
Really?
Yeah, I believe his name was Marco Bonello. And he owns a pizza shop called Bonello's New York Pizza, and said, "Hey, would love for you guys to come by." And
Can we come there now?
Yes, and
I'm starving.
I told him, I'm like, "Dude, we would love to come there." He goes, "Really?" I'm like, "No, seriously. I remember your email, and we should do this." And then you and I just, I mean, it's not the closest place to us, but for good pizza, I said, first of all, remind me, is it Chicago or New York? And he says, New York. I went, I'm in.
Yeah,
because I don't care. There's going to be a lot of people in the Midwest who are going to be upset about this, but you guys...
We talked about this.
You guys make tomato cake. You don't make pizza.
So I love
Sorry.
it. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. But if I had to choose...
It's not pizza. It's tomato cake.
Whatever.
If Chicago said, we make the world's best tomato cake, I would be on board with that. But they're trying to co-opt pizza from people who really make pizza. And it's not pizza. I'm sorry.
I'm saying I love them both, but if I had to choose one on an island
I'm
forever...
I'm not saying I don't like Chicago pizza. I'm saying it's not pizza.
It is pizza.
It's like saying I like roast beef and I like New York pizza.
No, it is pizza.
No, it's not pizza. It's
pizza.
Tomato cake.
Well,
it's tomato cake.
No, it's not.
It's the ingredients, order of operations are installed wrong. It's got that thick, doughy crust. The toppings are layered and then sauces on. It's all backwards. It's not right.
I love it.
Yeah. You like it because it's food.
No, I don't love all food.
So I did
But
ask.
I would take New York style over it.
Listen.
But not by a ton.
Listen, I talked to Marco and I said, hey, got a question for you. I want to go eat at your establishment. I want to have your pizza. Do you have Dr. Pepper?
I have a feeling the answer is yes.
There was a pregnant pause that had me worried.
Oh, really?
And then he said, only in cans. And I said, I'm good. We're good. I can do cans. As long as it's not bottles. Bottles, soda inside plastic is crap. So we're good. He has ice cold Dr. Pepper in cans. And he has a delicious New York pizza, and I want to go.
Here's the thing about Pedro.
Are you going with me?
100% because they have a great bar scene.
Whatever. I'm going for pizza.
We go and we do the pizza, and then there's like three or four really cool bars.
Wait, so we would go eat his pizza and then leave his establishment?
Unless he has beer, and then we're hanging.
Okay. I wonder if he would let us make some pizza. Do you think he'd let us spin the dough in the air and like throw it up to the ceiling and catch it?
I don't know. Are there any regulations that prevent two hairy dudes from spinning pies in the air?
I think there's a lot of regulations. But what if it's our pie?
That sounds disgusting.
Okay. Well, I'm down to try.
All right.
I've always wanted to make a pizza in a pizzeria.
What's it called again?
Bonello's New York Pizza in San Pedro.
It's Pedro. The locals.
Pedro, whatever.
Do the locals say Pedro? You don't even say San. You go, Pedro, what's up?
Pizza, whatever.
Oh, come on now. All right, it is the Truck Show Podcast. I'm Lightning, and the guy over there is Holman. And on this show, we're going to bring you... In this episode, we're going to bring you Stephen Watson from Offroad Design.
Oh, you mean listener Stephen Watson?
Yes, that's Stephen Watson.
Emailer Stephen Watson?
Now, wait a minute.
5-star hotline message leaver Stephen Watson?
Do you think he's listening before we call him?
Yes. Full-size truck builder.
Stephen Watson?
Yeah, he's like an Adonis to all of the full-size truck hardcore off-road guys.
An Adonis? That's like a guy who like works out and he's like built and glistening.
Yeah, he's on a mountain in Colorado and the sun shines on him 24/7. It's amazing. So we should definitely talk to him. And then we'll also kick off my thoughts on the new Ford Ranger. Now that we can talk about it, you may have heard our Have You Heard episode last week about a little bit from the Ranger Raptor. So I want to talk about the Ranger today, and then we'll get to your emails from our inbox.
But first, we have to thank our partners, starting with Nissan.
If you're in the market for a new half-ton or mid-size truck, you want to head over to nissanusa.com or down your local dealer where you can check out the Nissan Frontier, the Nissan Titan, and the Nissan Titan XD. And, of course, Titans have the industry's best 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and all the Nissans have zero-gravity seats. Why is that important? Because I have driven a lot of trucks in the last few weeks, and I'm really missing that Frontier I had because those seats are some of the most comfortable in the entire industry. So if you're somebody with back issues that finds trucks uncomfortable or seats in general, like
seats in general,
well, a lot of automotive seats,
I can't sit down.
There's some of these vehicles that have like a gazillion different adjustments and they're still not comfortable. Mm-hmm. I have yet to sit in a Nissan product with zero gravity seats that I didn't immediately sink into and go, dude, this is perfect. So I'm one of those guys. Love the seats. Buy the truck for the seats only. The rest of the truck's good, but the seats themselves are better. And
that's an interesting purchase decision.
That Fender audio system, solid, because I've also been in a lot of trucks lately that have their upgraded audio.
No highs, no lows?
I'm just saying some of those systems aren't as advertised. Check out the options and pricing today. Once again, that's nissanusa.com.
And if you have a 1991 to 1999 Jeep or a 2000 to 2006 Jeep and the headers are starting to rot and it sounds like...
Sounds like you need a header.
Yes, I do. You need to call your friends over at Banks Power, 800-601-8072, or hit up bankspower.com and type in your year, make, and model to find stainless steel Jeep headers that don't make that god-awful sound.
Ones that don't have holes in them.
Exactly.
How about the performance, Lightning?
You'll gain up to 22 horsepower just by bolting on these headers.
With nothing else?
That's it.
Dude, that's solid.
It is solid. BanksPower.com to find yours.
The Truck Show. We're gonna show you what we know. We're gonna answer what the truck, 'cause truck rhymes with the Truck Show. We have the lifted, we have the lowered, and everything in between. We'll talk about trucks that run on diesel and the ones that run on gasoline. The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Oh, oh.
It's the Truck Show with your hosts, Lightning and Holman.
All right, whole shot. It's time to call Mr. Stephen Watson. You ready? Let's do it. Let's dial.
Let's do it.
All right.
Lightning at Holman.
From a mountaintop high above the beauty of Colorado, our friend and, should we say newest advertiser, and just put him on the spot and make him spend money with us before we go on the show?
No, don't do that. That's dirty.
Yeah, it's funny, though.
It is funny. Mr. Stephen Watson, what's up? How you doing?
Hey guys,
How's your ears after that?
you've recently received compliments on your prowess, and not to try to inflate any heads there, but you do a good job on keeping the audio working properly.
Oh, well.
That all came through okay.
Thank you. Yes. Well, Ed, so you win some, you lose some. I lose some every Tuesday when we record, and I win some when I post the audio and it sounds good. So I'm doing all right. Hey, it's your turn to choose an intro. So do you want...
Well, let's just, he's a listener of the show.
I know that. Does Stephen want...
Hold on, I'm just going to go through the list.
Wait, you're going to let him choose?
Yeah. Do you want innovator, entrepreneur, pull up a stool, who dis,
I don't think...
or old-timey shop talk?
I got to be honest, I'm not comfortable letting a guest choose their own intro.
Stephen Watson, it's fine.
Yeah?
Yeah, we can let him.
Let's go with the pull up a stool and share.
Pull up a stool and share. Here we go.
Yeah.
Pull up a stool and share. Pull up a stool and share a story. Pull up a stool and share. How about you pull up a stool and share with us? Oh, I love that one. Never gets old.
Good choice, then.
Good one.
All right, so we've had a bunch of listeners who are like, Stephen Watson keeps leaving you voicemail. Stephen Watson keeps emailing you. Why don't you have Stephen Watson back on the show? And I'm like, well, here he is. So you're back. I think the last time I saw you, we were hanging out at SEMA in the Skyjacker booth, and you were regaling me with tales of how many times you swore lightning out listening to the last 10 shows.
Swore? Wait, what? Why? What? Why?
Maybe he didn't. I don't know.
No, I feel like there's a little bit of truth to this.
Minis too much.
Oh, is that the deal?
All right, so Lightning's like, well, what's he going to come on and talk about? And I'm like, well, normally we're like pushing some parts or something, or we've got somebody who has some. But this is a rare time we have somebody who's both a listener, longtime listener, and a shop owner. And there's a bunch of questions out there, but then you had opinions on the show. So I wrote down a bunch of stuff, and I think the first thing we should discuss is third vehicles, because you seem to have an opinion on the third vehicle thing.
Oh, I think it's the second vehicle thing.
Oh, second vehicle thing, okay.
Yeah, because I think that most people that have a truck are going to have something else that they drive quite a bit, because the truck's probably not going to get good mileage, especially if it's kind of a broad, your tow rig, that kind of stuff. And so you kind of end up with a vehicle. And especially if it's a project, you're definitely going to have something to drive. There's all kinds of things to discuss as far as the merits goes, talking about the Mini versus the Honda. And, as we message back and forth a little bit, the true answer is a mini truck. But there's room to debate and come to that conclusion.
Well, you're right, but neither of us have a mini truck. You don't think that my second car is good and Holman CRV? Like, where do you stand on all this? The CRV versus when I used to have a mini?
Stephen Watson, owner of Offroad Design, who builds solid axle, awesome, mostly GMs and things like that. What is in your driveway right now? Let's take this to your home.
At this point, there is a Toyota FJ that my wife drives. There's an Isuzu pickup. That's all there is to describe the Isuzu pickup, because apparently that's what they were, Isuzu pickups that my younger son is driving, F-150.
There's not a whole lot of
We're short on
small
mini
economy
trucks.
cars here. Or
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
the Isuzu is sort of a mini truck, but it depends. Like, is that like an Isuzu Colorado Isuzu, or is that like an older Isuzu like
Oh,
pop?
this is an Isuzu mini truck.
All right.
So, which is the perfect kid support vehicle because he can haul parts in it. It gets good mileage. You know, it's kind of small and economical. Even the quote big tires on the Isuzu are like 30s.
Hey, that's
Even
big
those are
compared
cheap.
to a CRV or a Mini.
Yep, and it is 4-wheel drive, so it's a viable backup. So yeah, that's why I think the mini truck is the ultimate thing. But as you guys know, a lot of people end up with just kind of the different hand-me-downs, which is kind of how I sort of ended up with a Jetta.
Oh, okay, there we go.
There you go.
All
See,
right.
got right to the
Yeah.
finally got to the core.
It's beating around the bush a little
My
bit there.
God, 2 hours later.
2 hours later.
So a
There's
Jetta. So a
pretty
Jetta.
But it's a
valid
diesel
that people
Jetta.
It is a 5-speed diesel Jetta that is fairly fun to drive. It runs better than a stock one, and so that helped. Nothing extensive, but enough to make it kind of fun to drive, and it still gets like 45 miles to the gallon.
Does this apply where they say it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow? And that's a really slow car driving kind of sort of fast-ish?
Yeah, this is one of those where it's just nice to drive for a couple of weeks without going to a gas station.
So hold on a second. It sounds like you were super fired up about our conversation or our heated debate about the Mini versus the CRV. And now we got you on the horn and you're like not blasting us the way maybe we thought you would.
Because he's a shy,
I think a lot of
wilting
people
flower.
end up in your situation. You know, I have the truck and I also have the long commute. So I drive the car and my wife drives the truck to work. That's common. I think guys do that. You could probably have people call in and tell stories how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sean's, I have this hand-me-down thing that's awesome, and I'm just going to drive it for a while. I mean, my dad ended up driving a Subaru Brat for a long time because it was, I think my brother drove it in high school. It wasn't a Brat, it was a hatchback.
But Stephen, hold on a second, Stephen.
Because my brother gave it to him. And it just
Hold on
stayed
a
with
second.
us.
Hold on a second. The Brat and the Jetta are both cooler than a Honda CRV. Even if it was a brand new 2024 CRV, fresh off the lot, 0 miles, new car smell, the whole thing, still lame.
That is so lame.
Lame. Super duper lame.
A diesel and a 5-speed makes just about anything cool.
I mean, I kind of have to agree with that.
That's just kind of how it works. That's the only way that I preserve my manhood driving it.
A grown man in a Jetta. Yeah, I mean, it is a chick car for sure. But with the rolling a little coal out that tiny little 1-inch tailpipe, you know.
Well, you should send him a Banks monster tip on that thing.
That would look hilarious. A 5-inch monster exhaust.
Cut it up into the trunk.
Yes. Oh, no.
Cut into the rear bumper.
No.
French it in.
Hold on a second. I will send you one. I will send you the patented sidekick tip, which is 9 inches across. It's odd round if you hood stack it. Dude.
I'm not sure I'm into it quite that much.
Come on. I want a hood stack on the Jetta.
Maybe whatever that engine gets swapped into.
No. See, that's not. You're missing the comedy. The comedy is a hood stack.
No,
on a
but
Jetta.
you're missing what he just said.
Of the Jetta.
You're missing what he just said,
Which was
whatever it gets swapped into.
no. I get that, but we don't know.
I want to know what is it like? Is there a Suzuki Samurai like hiding around on his property in Colorado or something?
No, he doesn't have a plan for that yet. He just knows that when the car dies, he's going to take the engine and put it in something that's slightly cooler. Right? Am I right? You don't have plans for that yet.
Well, that does bring up. I actually daily drove a Sidekick, 91 kicker for many years. And it's still floating around. My middle son's been daily driving it for a while now because it came to the family through a junkyard and just never died. So there's just
they're pretty
another
rad.
example of a vehicle that they just show up and they just never leave. And it was amazingly fun to drive. And back in '07 or '08, I drove it everywhere, including some trips up in the mountains that I didn't want to take my Suburban on because it would cost me $150 in fuel to go on a day trip. So there's a lot of fun in the auxiliary vehicle.
I like that, the auxiliary vehicle.
There you go.
I don't think you're allowed to call the CRV an auxiliary vehicle.
It's exactly what
I
it
know,
is.
I know it is. I know it actually is.
It literally is an auxiliary vehicle.
But it should be called your daily because that's what it is.
No, it's not. I haven't driven in 2 weeks.
It's more. What have you been? Oh, you haven't driven anywhere in 2 weeks.
All right, so enough of this auxiliary vehicle stuff. So we were going through some emails, and one of our listeners who writes all the time, Trevor Nemero, had a very specific question. He says, hey, would you get Steven Watson back on, and would you ask him when he's going to get on the 05 Plus Dana 60 bandwagon? He says, I don't own a Square anymore, but I think I talked to him a couple years ago, and he said they were experimenting with them. Kingpin 60s are like $2,000 to $5,000 for crusty stock takeouts now, at least here in California, so they're not really a feasible go-to anymore. Several people ran those axles on the UA, on the 2023 UA Ultimate Adventure, which you just got back from, a couple months ago. And he says he only saw Dave broke a stock 1480 shaft. So he's saying he thinks there's enough validation that the quote-unquote, oh my God, ball joints and unit bearings isn't an issue. So what's your take on some of those newer Dana 60 axles and unit bearings and all that kind of good stuff for your hardcore builds?
So we are actually right directly in the middle of working on a project using one of those. It's a little educational because those axles overall are really well sorted. I mean, guys have been using them for years. They have super aftermarket support. If you want to get rid of ball joints, that's not a problem. If you want to put beefy knuckles on them, it's not a problem. If you want to put indestructible shafts in them, it's not a problem, and bigger ring gears. And I mean, everything's there to do really amazing stuff with them. But one of the things that Chevy trucks are good at is just being able to like bolt things in like Legos. A K30 Dana 60 just bolts into a Blazer. You know, and that's one of the advantages that they've always had through the years is it doesn't require a custom axle. It's not like a Jeep or anything else where you're modifying width and you're modifying bracketry and you're doing all this. You just literally bolt it in. And that's where I think there's still a ton of value in putting the time into finding that K30 Dana 60 is if you're going to bolt it in with leaf springs, it still just bolts into the vehicle. And you're going to have to do a number of different things depending on how deep you're going with the mods to get a left-hand high pinion linked up axle in there. And I think people lose track of some of that work. And some drivetrains support, like a lot of times when you're doing a swap, especially a diesel swap, a left-hand front drive shaft and transfer case system is native, and it gets the transfer case away from the exhaust pipe, which runs down the right frame rail, and makes everything go pretty smooth with that specific swap. But one of the things that you run into with most square bodies is the exhaust is right where a high pinion axle with the drive shaft on that side wants to be. You know, now you're playing funny header games with frame rails that never had high clearance headers for front diffs like that. So, you know, there's a handful of things that go into them. Well, ground clearance is another one. You know, as we're playing with this project, you start looking at the way the link mounts are on those things, and the link mounts hang as low as the bottom of the differential. So ground clearance is terrible. And like our coilover brackets that are built to go on to a kingpin axle are automatically built with the link tucked up behind the axle tube. So your clearance is way better. And you can do that to the 05 and up Super Duty axles, but you're cutting off a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a kind of a project to get down to bare tubes and start over. So it is really viable if you're doing a pretty involved build. And we have customers that have done that. We've helped them with the bracketry and everything for it. But you just got to be careful for a milder build that you don't get sucked into a whole bunch of work that's not necessary when you could just use the right thing.
Is the strength comparable between the two? And I hear what you're saying is you could find this axle for a couple grand as a takeoff in a junkyard, but then you could be 10 grand into it for fab and everything to make it even fit up. I'm assuming they're comparable in strength. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be part of the conversation, especially since the brackets and everything, have to be redone.
The Super Duty axle actually has potential to be quite a bit stronger than especially a GM Kingpin 60. You can get in, well, you're starting with a high pinion. You can get into bigger ring gears in them if you get the right combination of Super 60 stuff in them. It's really easy to dump 1550 jointed shafts in them or the giant RCVs. It's pretty easy to build that Super Duty axle into a lot more torque strength than you would get out of any of the Kingpin stuff. Question is, at some point and this is something we're going to go through, is weighing everything out. I hate to look at the Kingpin 60 as maybe being a lighter option because they're pretty chunky, but I think there's a point where that happens. And then there's, to kind of steal one of your phrases and twist it to this, there's axle inappropriateness.
Nice.
That's
how many Jeep guys how many Jeep guys have axle inappropriateness?
Well, it's funny because I'm on a lot of the Facebook groups, and so there's some good ones. Jason Aubrey runs one called Wrangler No BS group. So if anybody's an a-hole, they get booted immediately. No smart asses. It's only helpful people. So for a lot of the newer folks coming onto there, it's great because it's a pretty welcoming environment. Well, you go to some of the other ones like the regular JL forum or the EcoDiesel Gladiator forum.
What was the group that they were thrashing each other over the AEV stickers?
Oh, I don't remember. I'm on so many of some of them I just don't even just shake my head and move on with my day. But somebody had said, "Hey, what kind of lift is it going to take to put 40s on my Gladiator with the stock axles?" And everybody just tore him up. And he's like, "I don't even go off road," and they're still tearing him up. They're like, "Dude, no, not even for the mall. Like you just."
I know two guys on 42s on stock axles. Yeah.
That's the equivalent of.
No, that's a really fat guy in skinny jeans.
It's like a Dana 30 front end back in the Jeep days where somebody would build up or put in a rear 44, and then they wouldn't do anything to the front, and they would just completely grenade the front. We even did it four-wheeler. A few times where we did like, indestructible or how far could you push a Dana 30 or Dana 35 front axle. And we had true tracks and axle shafts. And I mean, it's great that there's upgrades, but you're still money ahead starting with a better axle and building that up than going with the cheap axle and making it strong because there's just too many weak points.
Well, but I think we're getting off track. So we talked about
we're talking about axle inappropriateness.
Yes.
So this is right on track.
right.
No, but like when is it too much?
Well,
like that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think, because it can go both ways. And the point I was heading for is there's a lot of guys that are swapping 1-tons into stuff that absolutely don't need it. And it's this guy that's going to drive on the street in a resto mod truck with smaller tires. And unfortunately, I think some of that's starting to kind of fade away, but it's really easy for that guy to call up. Yeah, I'm swapping a Dana 60 into this thing. I'm going to be running 35s. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. We don't even have ground clearance at that point. Like a Dana 60 pumpkin is so big on 35s, you can barely go over a beer can. I mean, it's just, it's like, that's silly. I mean,
could you go over a speed bump in a mall?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
The problem, but you couldn't go not lengthwise. I mean, people don't realize how big a 60 is compared to like a 44 or 9-bolt or whatever. I mean, a 14-bolt, a 60. Those are big housings.
Can I ask a dumb question? Like,
please do.
I will.
You are the king.
How big is the ring gear? I mean, like in a modern GM or a Ford truck, you got a 12-inch ring gear. So that's a foot from, you know what I mean? It's like 6 inches out on each side from center. And then you've got the case that it's sitting, which has got to be at least another inch out beyond that. So now you're 7 inches beyond center, minimum. How big around is that pumpkin? Like,
like on
so
a
the
40.
60 is a 9 3/4 ring
I
gear.
think it's 9 3/4.
And the 14-bolt 10.5 is 10.5.
Sterling the same way, or a 10 1/4 on a Sterling. That's a fairly popular axle that you can find. And then like on a Jeep, 44, so a older 44 like JK, a non-Advantech, I think is like an 8.8. And then the Advantech, which is the newer ones in JLs and Gladiators, I think are 8.5 inch. So that just tells you for scale kind of where the low end Dana 44 up to like a 60, where everything fits in there.
It's pretty amazing. You get like the new Ford's got what, a 12.5? Like they're
I think there's one that has a 13. Is that the Ram with the American axle, the big one?
That is a 12.5 as well.
12.5.
Yeah, so we've got diff covers for them all, but like the biggest one that I've seen, but I haven't measured the ring gear, is the new Ford with the HO, the one that's 1,200 pound-feet of torque. That's a big boy. Like that is monstrous. I don't know. I think it's a Dana axle, but I don't know how big it is.
We're also throwing 500 horsepower through these things and 40,000 pound trailers behind them. So I guess they got to be able to take it and do it for long distances. That's something to totally sidetrack this little conversation. We've seen carrier bearing problems in a Sterling 10.5 in tow rigs. My dad's Super Duty was, 100,000 miles, 125,000 miles, and we were putting carrier bearings in it. So they make them big for a reason. This is where we come back to this guy building a resto mod truck, and we do have to respect power numbers these days with axle choices, because actually with everything about the vehicle, even getting into suspension stuff and all that, because when these things were built, 200 horsepower was a pretty powerful engine, and now if you don't have 400 horsepower, you're really not doing it right. It's so easy to drop horsepower into these things that you have to pay attention to it a little bit. And your old 28 spline 10 bolt that, is like a stock 80s Blazer axle.
Yeah.
That's even more than ever not the right thing for the rear end. But, a stock half ton or 3/4 ton front end is still does fine. It, most of the time when you're on the street, it just is along for the ride. Strength is adequate even for some off-road use with a smaller tire. So, that's where, like I say, I think a lot of guys are starting to check up a little bit on automatically swapping 1-tons into everything. The rears, like I say, those demand some respect because it's so easy to have horsepower and fun.
Well, I was going to bring up really quick too is it's not just the axle and the transmission and the engine, but it's so much easier to get a 4-to-1 T-case these days that thinking of the torque multiplication on these higher output engines, you have to think about that for your joints and steering and shafts and all that stuff too, because 4-to-1, you're 4 times the torque of what that thing. So if you had something that had 300 pound-feet of torque and you're like, I got my new crate engine that's 400 horse and 550, think of all that power when you're in low range that you're putting through. And a lot of people, want to have all the parts, but they don't necessarily do the math to make sure that the parts are going to live.
Yeah, and it's almost easier if a guy's getting into, if he's deep enough to be looking at an aftermarket transfer case setup. Our Magnum hits 533 to 1, but that guy is definitely going to bigger axles. By the time he gets to the transfer case point, he's past the axle point. But one that is sneaky that, with the overall gear reduction, when you bring it up, is most of your modern automatics have 4+ to 1 low gears in the first gear. And then a 272 transfer case, you start doing the math on that, and all of a sudden, compared to an old K30 with a turbo 400 and a 205, with a 2.5 to 1 first and a 2 to 1 low range. This is stuff that we dreamed about going rock crawling with, and it's stock in all of these new trucks. That reduction's automatically there. So, guys swapping a 6L80 and just a 241 into his Blazer K10, K20, whatever, he's got way more reduction than people are used to.
Ball joints versus kingpins. So obviously kingpins were what everything was back in the day.
Are you
backing up?
Are you getting? No, it's a door chime.
He's doing a bread delivery.
Did we lose you?
Well, I'm sitting in the truck, and every once in a while, it wants to turn the phone off, and it gets cold.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So,
all right. So, kingpins were all the rage up until probably the early '80s, and ball joints came into play. But I'm seeing so many people now going back to kingpins and talking about kingpins. You want to tell our audience the difference between a kingpin and a ball joint, and why one is more desirable than the other?
So, just to give people kind of an idea. GM, Ford, and Dodge all ran the same identical knuckle pivot arrangement on their 1-ton axles through the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. and it was a big tapered bearing with a race. So something similar to a wheel bearing is your bottom pivot, and then the upper pivot was a steel cone on the axle housing with an opposing cone that was a plastic piece, actually, that was contained in the knuckle, and that was loaded with a spring. And so the way all of this goes together, there's no pieces that press in or press together or that you take apart, and just drop in a new cartridge like on a ball joint, just replacing loose joints. This is all rebuildable stuff. They're big burly bearings. Crash resistance is, I use the term crash because that is what most people equate hard off-road driving to, or would call it that. It's possible to break the plastic bushings, but the things don't ever come apart. You'll lose alignment, but it never comes apart. And so the ball joint stuff is all of your late 60s, 70s, 80s straight axle stuff. You get up even into the 1-ton stuff, starting with the Fords, and the Dodges when they went to the coil spring stuff in 94, they use a press-in ball joint that is the knuckle pivot. And so there's one on the bottom of the knuckle, one on the top of the knuckle, and they generally press into the knuckle, and then that indexes into the housing. And the problem is that it's possible to break a U-joint, and when those pieces kind of get balled up against each other, they can force those ball joints, kind of press the knuckle apart. So sort of, just presses the ball joints out of the knuckle. I mean, it'll blow the knuckle off of the vehicle. And, so tire, outer axle, everything kind of goes with it. With the bigger axles, when you get up into Super Duty stuff, they're pretty strong and they're just more robust parts. But it is, I watched it on a UA trip a couple of years ago. Steering system over-angled, busted a giant U-joint. It was chromoly 1550 stuff, but it still can't be over-angled.
Jeez.
And blew the knuckle apart. It was quite a recovery effort to make that happen, and that guy was really glad that he was on that trip with that group of people that knew exactly all the moves to make in that situation, because it would have been a real bad day without that crew. But that's where
Went from a mildly uncomfortable day to a really bad day.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been a real bad day without being on the UA trip. So, but pretty early on, people started building better ball joints, and durability is really good. There are ball joint eliminators that, are basically some kind of bolt-in systems with uniballs that replace those pivots for real hardcore stuff. So these days, probably strength-wise, I guess it is still possible that you see some broken ball joints here and there. And boy, you don't really break kingpin stuff. So maybe there's a slight strength advantage there, but
the main drawback, would you say, is maintaining alignment?
Main drawback with kingpin stuff would be maintaining alignment, and that's pretty easy to fix. You can put a bronze bushing in place of the plastic bushing, and then they're pretty much bulletproof after that. And things don't move around; they don't wear funny. And if you replace the spring with what's called a load bolt, it's where you actually have a giant, like a 5/8 set screw on top of the knuckle that sets your bearing preload. That turns into a pretty bulletproof system that, a lot of Ultra 4 guys that are running solid axles. That's a pretty common heavy-duty system, a lot heavier than the super cool Spider Track stuff that just uses a couple of uniballs and all fabricated lightweight, but they're still really robust. So, yeah, kingpins still have a good place, but the ball joint stuff is very usable, and once again, there's fixes for all of it. You sort of have to apply them piece by piece into that system, but there are fixes.
I had a question about uniballs versus ball joints. On a Chevy truck, it was IFS, very, very different, but I was blowing through. I had, what size tires did I have in there? I think I did 37s or 38s back 10 years ago or so, but I was blowing through the ball joints, and I was told to move up to uniballs, and I did. It took a different upper control arm, and then I lasted I don't know, several more thousand miles than I did with the ball joints. Does that decision making play a role in your parts with solid axles? Or are there uniball applications in what you're doing?
Some of the ball joint eliminator parts are based on, some of them are based on uniballs. And actually some of the, just the replacement ball joints are based on uniballs. Dynatrac replacement ball joints have a uniball inside the housing. Probably the biggest thing, like in your case with the upper control arm joint, is with a uniball, you can put in a bigger joint. You can usually get a bigger shank in them. The downside is they're not as protected from the elements. They're not sealed up like a ball joint.
No, they're not. So I had to keep them well greased or they would start rusting because they are bare metal. Yeah, so that is something that was kind of a downside, but they didn't. Everyone warned me that they would make noise. I didn't experience that, but I went through like 3 or 4 sets of ball joints. Just they don't hold up to the forces on big tires and that whole situation. I figured there was some.
Are you talking about on an IFS truck?
On an IFS truck.
Yep.
Again, I know it's different, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
At what point do you recommend guys swap out of a standard Moog, or equivalent ball joint and go into a uniball?
Yeah, and on the solid axle stuff, that's usually just part of a heavier duty ball joint, and some of it's going to be like on the, and this is getting a little bit out of our normal world with guys running the actual Super Duty axles, like in a Super Duty, or the Dodge axles in the Dodge trucks. I know they run in bigger tire packages, wheel offsets all play in, all that kind of stuff, but they'll start running into wear problems and getting into some of the heavier duty ball joints that are based on a uniball can be based, like you on just a wear part, or wear life. And one of the things there too is that you're getting into a part that was designed to be heavy duty from the start. And it's not that a ball joint can't be designed to be heavy duty. Our, the tie rod ends that we use in our steering systems are a decent example of that. It's a somewhat conventional design tie rod end. They just have a super heavy duty spring. There's super good materials, hard parts on both sides. So it's still a ball joint design piece, somewhat similar to the actual ball joints still, but it's designed for the purpose. It's designed to be really heavy duty. That's where, like that upper ball joint, in your case, when you put a uniball in it, you're putting in a much bigger uniball. You're putting in a much bigger stud. You're planning on it being an aftermarket piece to be beat on, and all of the other stuff is essentially a stock replacement that's designed for a stock truck. So it's almost one of those things where you're like, someone could build a ball joint 4-year-old Chevy that was super robust, but they just didn't. They just built it and based it around a uniball architecture.
Let's go back to solid axle stuff and away from my IFS. You're talking a lot of Ford Super Duty axles. How plentiful are they? And are you referring to older Super Duties, or are you talking about new Dana axles, Sterling axles that you're buying off the shelf? Like, we're throwing around the term as if everyone knows where we're getting these, Ford rear ends.
Yeah, so getting back to, what was the guy's name that asked the question to start with?
That was Trevor.
Was it Trevor?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Trevor's question. The Super Duty axle that he's referring to is the 05 and up coil sprung Super Duty stuff. And the front axle is the big deal, because the rears, people don't really care about that much. They generally grab a Sterling rear to match the front and swap it into a vehicle.
This whole time I'm thinking of the rears.
That's funny. Lightning also says he has a Sterling rear.
Yes, I do. It's
Lots of squats, people. Lots of squats. Don't skip leg day.
So anyway, it's the front axle that's the magic. So that's the the beefy piece. It's between Ford and Dodge, the Dodge axles are not as strong, not as supported in the aftermarket, a lot harder to deal with. So that Super Duty axle has become the darling of the the axle swap world and the hardcore builder world. And it's the 05 and newer. There's a couple of different generations with brakes and a little bit of stuff in the diff. But really, it's anything coil sprung Super Duty is going to be a good base starting axle for a lot of these projects, kind of within the parameters that we talked about earlier, that they don't swap directly into a Chevy truck. There are situations where they make sense, but that's the application that we're looking at, is that Super Duty setup.
And they're plentiful. Is that the bottom line? That they're in junkyards everywhere?
Yeah, and I think that's what he's bringing up. Trevor's bringing up is the fact that, let's face it, K30 stuff hasn't been produced since 90 or 91 was the last one to roll off of a dealer floor. They're pretty plentiful still. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if you have to pay $2,000 for a reasonable core heavy-duty axle that bolts into your half-ton vehicle, that's still pretty cheap. They are less plentiful and only becoming less and less plentiful. Whereas Super Duty stuff, they're still building the things. And they built them in production numbers that are giant, in 05 until now. So there are a lot of those. And that's where I think Trevor brought up the question is, what are you guys doing with that? And like I say, they're great for swap stuff. We're going to look into moving more that direction with our 90s solid axle swap and our early 2000s solid axle swap stuff, because they're, those vehicles are native left-hand drive shafts. So there are definitely places where they are the golden piece.
How much welding on these axles are you doing, if any?
All of it.
Okay, and if you are doing welding, so hold on a second. A lot of guys who are fabricators, there's two schools. Some guys are like, welding weakens everything. You don't want to weld to a stock chassis, weakens the chassis. And so where do you stand on this? You need to mount it to something, so you have to weld. How do you keep it from weakening the base product?
And this is where we're developing Super Duty stuff, and we'll kind of follow the track that we do with the kingpin axles. And the big thing there, and it's pretty true across the board of essentially any solid axle, is the knuckle arrangement, the inner C, a lot of people call it, the end forging that's pressed onto the end of the tube that a lot of times you end up welding pieces of bracketry to, is forged steel. So that is a steel part, and it welds beautifully. They weld just fine. That's how the factory welded it to the end of the axle tube. The other side, where you've got the axle tube pressed into the cast iron differential, that's a little bit different story. That's where you get into different types of cast iron that they used over the years, how much oil has impregnated itself into that old cast iron, how good are you at welding cast iron, both in technique and materials and, all the details with pre and post heats. So with our coilover kits, we have everything built to bolt to the casting, the center section, and you can still go in and weld all of that if you are the fabricator that can get that done. And it's not exclusive knowledge. There's lots of guys that do it, and it's not that hard. But we design our brackets to where they mount up to the axle just fine by welding to the axle tube and over to the end forging. And so it kind of keeps you from getting into welding on that center section. That said, there is a little bit of restraint involved in not, burring, one side of a bracket in all at once, because you can, even on heavy duty tubes, you can warp the tube. You can bend them, and then it's possible to just weld the other side and bend it back. So, none of that's permanent, but there's some technique involved there. But we are very, very far from the school of don't weld on it because it'll mess it up, because it's all mild steel that can be easily welded. And kind of the same thing on the frame rails. A lot of people look at the frame rails, like on the square bodies is the stuff that we deal with the most. Those things are a mild steel. They're not heat treated. They're not special. They weld beautifully. And you are doing the frame favors by welding stuff to it. They're not that strong to start with. and they fatigue and crack and need to be repaired, and they take welding beautifully.
That's
What's that?
that's not what I expected him to say. I mean, I would expect him to fatigue more with heating up and cooling up.
Why?
But basically, he's saying that gusseting them and such is
Yeah?
going to help their life.
Why would you think that it doesn't?
I'm learning. That's why I'm asking questions.
So,
Well,
like
and
now,
this is because in big truck world, there are actual heat treated frames, and this is I don't know how far it trickles down into maybe even like 4,500, 5,500 territory or medium duty trucks, but I know on a lot of semi truck size stuff, the frames are heat treated and or at least rolled out of a material that would be weakened by welding, and those frames are bolted together and you don't weld on them.
I wonder if
and
that's
I
where it
think-
came from.
well, I was going to say there are
think
light
so.
duty vehicles like Gladiators and JLs. Like a JK had a pretty decent frame. JLs and Gladiators have a thinner frame that is really susceptible to mistakes or problems if you weld on them wrong. But if you're a good welder and you know what you're doing, there's no issue. Lots of
think-
people are building coilover kits and gusseting and brackets and all that kind of stuff. It's really about the level of expertise and the quality of metal and the quality of welding and penetration. And, that's why it pays to go to a reputable, notable shop or use the right products, because those shops likely have a number of vehicles out there. Like Stephen Watson in Offroad Design has a slew of customers. He uses it. He knows what works, what doesn't. He's seen it all. Now, you may go to your buddy who's learning fab down the street. Oh, I can do that. And then you may end up having a problem, right? So it pays to go. It's the backbone of your vehicle. It's the frame. So it pays to go to somebody who's an expert. Pay a little bit more. It's cheap insurance, and you can have a better outcome most of the time as well.
And I appreciate the fact that he brought up the heavy duty trucks, because I think that's where maybe it started. Because the heat treat, he said the words heat treat,
Yeah.
and I think that's where maybe the guys that say don't weld to your chassis may think that they're all
But
heat treated.
who's saying that? Like in your world, who were those people? Was it like an engineer at work? Was it an old guy
Someone
that was at a coffee shop?
Someone that I work for.
So they said don't ever.
We talk to that guy occasionally.
Yeah.
I don't want to weld to this frame. I'm building these brackets to bolt on, and so it's kind of an old wives' tale that gets floated around, and depending on how many times it's been repeated around you, maybe it's believable. But that's probably where it comes from, is the heavy truck world, or variations thereof, where there's some heat treating involved in it, and it's something to keep track of, because as the factories, one of the cooler material things that I know of is the boron steel for the skid plates and all the GM stuff these days, in the ZR2 packages.
Yeah.
And that is a super cool process. I don't know apparently there's obviously some boron in the steel. It's probably got a bunch of chromium and molybdenum in it that would make it chromoly steel also, because they're basically, heat treating it as they stamp it, which is really cool. But the big thing is it is heat treated. So you're going to want to be careful welding. I don't know why you would want to weld on those skid plates. There's probably some reason, but if you were, that's something that you're probably going to lose the temper and mess that up by welding to it. And having that knowledge, because as the factories get better and better at this, just like, all the crash standard stuff and all the vehicle stability stuff and, suspension testing and emissions, everything on these things is getting more complicated and it's better and on and on. It wouldn't surprise me if we get to a point where there are frames that this shouldn't be welded on, once they leave the factory, or pieces of frames stuffed together. So, keeping a handle on it is definitely a good idea, especially when you get back into older stuff. Weld them up.
Weld them up.
I found this excerpt from a company explaining hot stamping boron alloyed steels for automotive parts, and it says the base material is 22 MnB5 and has ferritic perlitic microstructure with a tensile strength of approximately 600 megapascals or 87 ksi, and after the part is hot stamped, as a martinistic microstructure and increased strength up to 250% of its initial value. I know it sounds like it came right out of the Turbo Encabulator, but no, it came out of Google.
That sounds like a Drake song. No, like what were the first couple words in that sentence? The fernibular tibular?
Ferritic perlitic microstructure.
So the perlite is an early, a softer structure in the steel. I'm kind of reaching back here, but and one important thing there is when they talk about being like 87 KSI,
Yeah.
that is relatively weak material. In low-grade steel world, it's okay stuff, but like your DOM steel tubing that would be used in a roll cage is in that ballpark. That's unheat treated chromoly territory. And then when they talk about it getting 2 or 3 times stronger, you're getting up into probably around 200 KSI, which is like heat treated chromoly steel territory. And a good example of this is like AR plates, abrasion resistant plate that goes on material handling stuff, so loaders and backhoes and, all the buckets and conveyors and, all that stuff for handling gravel and rock and that type of stuff is essentially a heat treated chromoly material. And it makes amazing skid plates because it's so hard. It doesn't gouge and on and on. And it's in that, in that strength range after it's heat treated. So
so they're saying
the magic.
The strength range in an automotive application, like the boron steel AEV uses on the GMC Sierra, is up to 230 KSI after it's been heat treated. And I've had experience, with those skid plates before. And in fact, you may have been on a trip with me where I fell into a giant hole with my front wheel on my Jeep and landed right on the boron skid plate. And I thought for sure I lost a wheel or something like that. And the whole frame came right down on that. And there's a gouge in the powder coat, nothing to the steel at all. The whole weight of the vehicle dropped
just
right on
conk.
it. Yeah, it was like a 6 or 7 inch straight down drop into a hole, landing right on the down. So on a Jeep, there's a down tube basically with a blocker beam, and that blocker beam is what keeps you from going over the top of something. And so you cut the bottom of that off because AEV's bumper reuses the top and then wraps that boron steel around it and ties it together that way. And it landed right on those down tubes. And I thought for sure, trip's over. Not a scratch other than a little gouge in the powder coat.
How'd you get it out?
We winched it out.
Oh, okay.
That was no big deal.
So changing the topic, Mr. Stephen Watson, how the heck is business these days? Offroaddesign.com. How are you doing? It looks like you're kicking some ass. You've got a lot of parts on the website.
Wish he had some knowledge about some things.
I'm just saying, I think he's a good go-to guy. If you guys out there have questions about axle swaps or suspension, your forte is in GM, but you'll touch anything, right?
We really try to stay focused on the GM stuff because it's really nice to have the really in-depth knowledge to be able to help guys out in, I guess, just in that in-depth way.
Okay, so if you don't have GM, kick rocks. He doesn't want to talk to you.
Well, and this is where, some of our stuff does transfer around. We have guys that have used our coilover kits to swap stuff into old Dodge trucks, the 70s, 80s, early 90s Dodge stuff. In the transfer case world, we can put a 205 Magnum system, swap stuff around on, in about any brand. So those things are fairly brand agnostic. But when you get into the suspension world, it's basically GM centric. And it lets us do stuff like, I talked to a guy yesterday that had a late 70s K30 crew cab. And one of the things that not very many people know about those trucks is that they were essentially a factory 4-wheel drive conversion from GM.
Really?
So the back end, it took us multiple examples to kind of figure out what happened here. And the exact date ranges are still kind of fuzzy and so on. But those trucks have, like, the back end of a C30, the frame bracketry on them is 2-wheel drive stuff, and they have a solid axle up front. The telltale is that they'll have a suspension block in them from the factory, which that's the only truck that I've ever seen GM put a block in, was those kind of converted trucks to make up the ride height in the back. And I don't know why, but talked to a guy yesterday. Hey, the back end of my truck is sitting really low.
Oh, Steven's getting cold. He's got to turn the
Hold
heat
on a
back on.
second.
Hopefully it starts.
Okay.
We haven't left him out in the wilderness to freeze to death because
Yeah.
I picture him up on like a plateau right now. He's like in
Shivering?
his truck. Yeah. Well, by the way, what are you sitting in right now? What vehicle?
I'm not suffering at all. I'm in my 22 GMC 3500.
See, I knew it. I know that door ding anywhere. I knew it was new. He's on a plateau. He's at like Lovers Lookout, right? And he's looking over the
I'm
city.
actually in a valley.
What? Stop
but
it!
I can see the cell tower.
Stop it!
That's
Stop
the key.
it! I'm painting a better picture. You're at Lovers Lookout, and you're looking
Okay.
over the city, and the lights are twinkling, and the sun just set.
do you know what I had to do to convince him to come back on the podcast after last time?
He loves me. Stop it.
Not the same way you think he does.
Yeah, so suspension stuff, we focus on GM. We know it really well. One of the cool things is the rise of the resto mods has been going on for years, but it's really cool kind of working with a crowd that isn't going to go beat the trucks up. And it's neat for a couple of reasons. One is people have a different outlook on spending money on the truck, which is kind of cool when the thing is going to be worth something when they're done. And geez, for so many years with, beater trail rigs and let's be clear, not all square bodies, not all, even the 67 to 72 stuff. There are trucks that are so far gone that it's okay to use them off road. They don't all need to be restored and go to Barrett Jackson, but there's a lot of these that guys are going to drive, enjoy, and have for a long time and not beat up, and actually have something that, that kind of stays with them for a while. And in trail rig world, I went down this path. I had a cool truck, nice paint job, started off-roading it, and within 3 or 4 years, the thing was basically a buggy. Yeah, so knowing that that a lot of the guys that we're working with they're building a truck that, well, they may have gotten it from their grandpa, their dad, it's something like what they had when they were in high school, whatever, and it can go to their kid when the time comes. So that's kind of rewarding. The really cool thing is, we talked to some of these guys after we get a suspension set up, and our custom leaf program has been doing really well. And it's so cool hearing guys call up. I had no idea that you could have a leaf sprung truck that could ride like this. This is the best riding truck in my family's fleet. So that's always really nice.
I got to give Holman some credit for that. He's been singing the praises of Leafs for 6 years. I was like, oh, Leafs suck. I had really poor experiences with Leafs, and Holman set me straight. So mad props to this guy. You've proven otherwise, and Steven's here to back it up.
There's some great, back in the day, everybody wanted to throw on big arced springs, thick, lots of them, and of course, they rode like crap, and they're bouncing. There's no articulation, but even leaf spring technology has come a long way. It's the key is a lot of thinner springs. You can make them super flexy. You pair them with a really good, shock. I think everybody thinks you need a coil over everything, and the reality is there's some beautiful advantages to a leaf spring. The leaf springs are durable. You can usually bounce them on a rock or whatever. They both spring the axle and locate the axle, so it's not like you have to worry about extra arms and things hanging low. They're pretty high and out of the way, and you can get a bypass shock that can work with a leaf spring. The shock doesn't care what the spring is, and so many people are like, "Oh no, dude, it has to be a 4-link, 5-link bypass coilover, weld all these brackets." You could go out there with a really good set of leaf springs that are designed right with a really good shock, and you could have a lot of fun, and it'll ride great going down the highway. And again, alignments are easy, location of the axle is easy, durability on hitting things off road.
Yeah, they get a bad rap. Well, they have.
Was that a pun intended?
Yes, because you get axle wrap. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that we run into is, and to be clear, we have coilover kits that are a clear advantage over leaf spring stuff in a handful of ways. In lower end, the lower end of the performance spectrum, a lot of it's just handling, precision. In the steering, the driving experience overall is just a more crisp experience. And then when you get into more hardcore off-road stuff, there's durability advantages and so on. But the leaf springs are still really good. And when you're working with a vehicle that they just bolt onto, our custom leaf suspension is something that a guy can bolt onto his Blazer, for example, over a weekend with no trouble
and have immediate results.
Yeah, and go drive it. It's it's ready to go.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you're going to go replace your trophy truck suspension with leaf springs. I mean, obviously, coilovers and a 4-link or 5-link or something like that are a massive performance advantage toward the limit. But for the average guy building a truck who doesn't have that kind and feels like, oh man, I got to stick with leaf springs. No, there's a lot of advantages to leaf springs.
On my last truck, I remember I had the factory GM with the overload, and I ditched it and got a set of Atlas, and they were the coil pack they were much thinner.
Yep.
Right, and it rode so much better.
Yep. You look at I've had the guys at Deaver rebuild some springs for me and build some springs for me, and they just nail it every time. It's all about friction pads and the material and how many leaves you spec and the arc. And do you have anti-wrap, and is your geometry? I mean, you still have to have leaf spring geometry, right? Like you still have to have everything, keep it from twisting or S-twisting on itself and stuff like that. But as with anything, there's trade-offs. But for somebody who doesn't have a big budget, you can get a lot of performance out of a modern leaf spring suspension.
How are you handling the custom setup, Stephen? So is a guy calling and telling you how much weight, what the truck is, et cetera, or and are you physically putting the leaf packs together, or are you working with a Deaver or an Atlas or something like that?
Most of the customers, you can order this stuff through our website, and we actually have a spring form that's it's a couple-page questionnaire that you go over that gives us details about the truck, and specifically, it's getting to heavy things that you've added to the truck. And it's the come and swap, the winch bumpers, the tail, the tire carrier bumpers in the back, the giant toolbox gas tank combo in the bed, that kind of stuff. And even down to on a Blazer, are you going to run the hard top or the soft top the most? What do you want this set up for? So we walk through that on the spring design form, and that's what I at this point, I still do all of the spring design myself. I go through those and, set the lengths and the arches and the number of leaves and all that stuff. Then we have a contract spring shop that we work with that does all the construction, because that's pretty specialized stuff. When you get down to it, it's, I say that people put these together, so it isn't full on rocket science, but there's heat treating ovens, there's quenching oil tanks, and, they've got specialized little machines that wind the eyes on the springs, and they've got all the bucks that match all of the arches for setting up the individual leaves. There's a lot of just little details that go into doing them right. And, there's a reason why a spring shop is a spring shop. It's because that's what they do, and that's all that they do. Anyway, so we contract with a spring shop here locally that, has been doing, I have no idea how long they've been in business. They did work on springs for my Blazer when I was a kid, and do great work, do it to our specs, and everything works out great. So that's kind of the process in gathering the data, getting them spec'd, they go through the construction, and then get shipped out.
So this is a good segue for one of the things you and I were talking about in our emails leading up to this. What about the perception of off-road vehicles that are modified, and then how they handle and behave on the road? So you were talking about, kind of generally hearing, the chatter of people that were, I was going to get your suspension, but I'm not taking this thing off-road, which you're hearing them as saying, I'm okay with it being super rough and, crappy stock, because if I modify it to your stuff, I think people, one of the things that we've educated people about on the show, I think in the last 6 years, is, and one of the things that I hear a lot, like, I like Bilstein suspension. They've supported the show. We've used them on a bunch of stuff. It's a great product. But one of the things I've heard over and over again from people is, oh no, those are off-road shocks. They're not going to ride well. And one of the things about the Bilsteins is how well they ride on road. And I think, to your point, just because it's dialed in for off-road doesn't mean that you have a penalty on road.
One of the examples that I use, and this is this one's fairly easy for people to understand, in West Coast world, because they kind of get the concept. But, a trophy truck is the top end of the desert race, go fast off-road world. These things are, I'm hearing reports of 1,000 horsepower plus out of these things.
Yep.
And, they'll run a $140 down, barely graded gravel roads, pretty rough stuff that they're doing ridiculous speeds on. So I kind of pose this question. It's like, do you think that this truck that can carve these back roads at triple digit speeds is really going to handle terribly on asphalt? That just seems like a completely backwards way to think to me, that, this thing that can keep you alive on a shelf road, at these triple digit speeds on dirt, is going to be terrible on asphalt. And to throw out a little bit of credit here, in that example, those things have a bunch of body roll.
Yep.
But they also
36 inches of travel.
Active shocks.
I had that chance to ride with Ryan Arciero in his truck, and we were doing almost 120 miles an hour over the whoops. And it's so violent that everybody thinks like a trophy truck is plush.
Well, no, because you always see the helicopter shots when the cab is floating.
Yeah, and the wheels are moving. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing acting on the frame and the cab. Well, and I'll tell you, from sitting in the in the passenger seat, it's violent. It's not like, oh, look at me. It's not like you're in your Geyser Brothers pre-runner that's set up for Super Cush. You're in an F1 car that has carbon fiber and chromoly and CNC parts and the whole deal, doing race track speeds in the open desert, and you have to be an athlete to survive that. I mean, it's not this big marshmallow that you're like, woo, let's try for 200, right? Like, it's not. It's like, holy crap, I'm going 117, 120 miles an hour, and the wheels are only touching the tops of the whoops, right? But all of that force is still going into the chassis. It's like,
I feel like, so I used to go to Supercross religiously for 20 years, and you'd watch back, and I'm sure there were guys like Bob Hanna and stuff, early guys in the late 80s, early 90s, but it wasn't until like Jeremy McGrath would fly over the tops of the whoops, like just bang, 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 bang. That was A, tons of skill, but B, just sheer strength, right? Imagine the force that his legs were taking at the top of every whoop with a swing arm compressing on every single one. I mean, that was going right into your ass in the truck.
Yeah. No, I mean, you feel it. And I'm trying to hold my phone up, right, to try and take a video of the experience. And I literally cannot hold my arm steady. My phone is hitting the ceiling, hitting my lap, and I'm trying to compensate. But like the amount of hertz that's happening, you have latency. I had arm latency and trying to control it because I couldn't keep up with the hertz that were coming in, right? And so I'm constantly doing.
You're talking about the frequency that you were going over the whoops.
Yeah, I couldn't compensate. It's not like
it's like 5 per second or maybe 20
whatever
per second.
It was, doesn't matter. It's like when you go over bumps in your truck, and it's like, and you're holding your coffee cup up and it's not spilling. No, that's impossible in a trophy truck. So.
Again, it goes to the helicopter shots that we always see where it looks like the cab is
those
just
are
nice
deceiving.
And smooth. Yes, they are.
My point is that you look at that and you go, look at that calm marshmallow those men are in, right? And no, it's not like that.
Really, their spine is poking out of their ass.
Looking at that, as you're doing that, Ryan was driving the truck.
Right.
And once again,
he had to keep his foot on the pedals and his hands on the wheel, and he's shifting.
And he was steering it. So when we've been tuning shocks, specifically in our Ultra 4 car, one of the things that was a data point was, can you still steer the truck?
Sort of important.
Yeah. Well, but you get to a point where you're just kind of hurting it and, hoping it goes the direction that you want it to go. And as you tune the suspension in and tune the shocks in, you get to where you're actually placing the truck, where you want it to go. And, when we're doing, in our case, we might have been doing 60 across a rough section. And at that point, if you can precisely steer the truck, you have room to go faster. But in a worse suspension iteration, we might not have been able to steer it at that point. Might have been at the point where you're losing control and having to chase it around. And, and then when you come up on the, on the two bushes that are too close together, you can't split them. And so that's where that, that control of that shock tune and the suspension geometry tune and all of that stuff comes in is, when that guy can run that trophy truck at $120 through that rough stuff and see a rock coming and actually dodge it, or see a bush coming and dodge that, or there's another line popping up and I want to steer
Or
off
just
this
drive right
direction.
through it because you're in a trophy truck.
Well, even those guys come up against rocks that are too big, but it's that backing that level off, is when we have that kind of steering precision, even as I was coming down here, my wife asked me what we were going to talk about. I was like, well, this is one of the things. And I was like, you know what? I guess this is a good question for you. You've driven all of our stuff, right? Yeah. She's like, yeah, pretty much. And I mean, she's taken like our 99 2500 is a leaf sprung solid axle truck. She took it on the Hole in the Rock trail from here, drove it down there, drove the trail and drove it home by herself. She had
she's a
couple
keeper.
of the boys with her. I don't know that they were old enough to drive and just took off. And I think probably her favorite truck to drive is our convertible K30 that is coilover and 4-link front and back with a pretty rowdy V8 and so on. That truck is, it looks very off-roady, but when you're driving it on the street, the steering has a really light feel. It's extremely precise. And even though it has a good bit of body roll, the steering doesn't vary with that body roll. The geometry is set up well. So when you turn the tire, when you turn the wheel, the tires go where you want to go and they stay going that way, kind of regardless of everything else that's happening. And it's actually really easy to drive on the street. It doesn't seem that way, but it's the way that it works. And that's the, one of the myths. And back to leaf springs, they are just the inherent geometry of leaf springs. The more technical side of it is they inherently have some roll understeer in them. So when you body roll in a corner, they tend to steer out of the corner, which fixes the vehicle. It doesn't steer into the corner, which is a problem with a lot of crappy setup link suspensions. You'll go into a corner, get body roll, and the body roll will make the vehicle steer more, which makes it body roll more, which makes it steer more, and it's an unstable feedback loop. And that's what you're trying to prevent. And that's some of what people see from the old, super slinky rock crawler days on the street is these things that just get super squirrely.
Yeah.
And that's where a leaf spring is naturally roll understeer, and a properly set up link system may not hit roll understeer, but it's going to not be too much roll oversteer. And that's one of the myths that we really try to dispel is that, with our 4-link conversion again, specifically, it's like, look, Dodge has been running 4-links on the front of their truck since 94. This is clearly a suspension that works fine for a street-driven vehicle. In this case, we just have the geometry right, like Dodge did on a stock truck. A Jeep TJ, that was the beginning of this in the Jeep world. And in stock form, those drive really nice on the street. It's easy to lift them really any at all and make them handle kind of crappy. But that's, that's where getting that geometry right is really correct. And once again, trying to kind of dispel this myth that, that a truck with a modified suspension handles poorly when it doesn't have to be the case.
Stephen, changing the topic really quick here. Tell me about the GMC you're sitting in that's brand new.
Yeah, it's got some miles on it. But to clarify, I still haven't bought a new truck. I don't know if that's a point of pride or just an observation, but even this one I found used. So it's basically just my tow pig, but it's also a really nice truck to drive, which is, I don't know, just having things like stupid seat heaters and, a stereo that just works all the time, and, in a truck that I can hear the stereo when it's playing. There's some nice features about it. Basically, I put a set of Nitto Recons on it just recently because it came time for tires, and bumped those up a little bit. I think they're 295 70s, and just put them on the stock wheels. So, gave it a tiny bit of attitude, and then did a BDS sort of a leveling small lift. I think it's a 2-inch lift that we put on it with some Foxes, talking about putting good shocks on stuff. Splurged and did the Foxes with the DSCs. That's pretty impressive. The being able to dial it up when I'm towing stuff and, back it off some when I just want it to ride a little softer is pretty cool. I put I'm sitting here staring at the iDash that tells me that I'm at 91% on my regen percentage.
Oh, he's about to regen.
Yeah, fortunately, I'll drive it down the highway with the trailer behind it is the next thing that it'll do, and give it a good chance to clean itself out. Yeah, that's really it. Otherwise, we got good seat covers in it because, kids and dogs and tools and me.
It comes lightning ready.
It sounds it sounds like you need a Derringer tuner. It sounds like you might need a rear diff cover or boost tubes. It sounds like you might need some other accoutrement. I was actually thinking
of Pedal Monster.
Yes, you do.
Pedal Monster is probably...
We know a guy.
Because it is laggy, and honestly, I cannot complain about power levels on this truck and towing. It's, even in stock form, it's pretty amazing.
Until you try Derringer. I'm sorry for the shilling here, but until you try one, and then you'll go, oh.
Well, I had one on my 17.
Okay.
And that was cool. And I can only imagine with, in this package with more cooling and with the 10-speed. And that's something that's been kind of cool that I've been able to watch, having had an iDash in the 17 and watching it in this one, is the 17 would derate because I would start seeing, basically you could see when it got to 250 degrees on the oil temp, you could feel the truck start slowing down on a big hill. I don't know that I've seen oil temperatures much over about 220 in this truck ever. So it just, all of the stuff that they did with the cooling package just makes it so that it can use all the power. With this, I bet having the Derringer on this one would be a lot more impressive because it's got more headroom, I guess, before it starts shutting itself down. So may have to play with that.
Might be able to hook a brother up with some something. You know what I'm saying?
What's the next trend coming up? I know you guys have your awesome Magnum box. That thing's incredible for the MP205 cases. That gives you a 533 low range in addition to the normal was 1.96 to 1 or something like that.
Right. Yeah, the 205 is pretty anemic by itself, but yeah, that we end up with a lowest low of 533, but then a 272 in the middle also.
Beautiful.
So new thing coming up in the gearing world, in suspension world.
Anything. What's hot and healthy? Like,
what are you most excited about?
Yeah, as a business owner, you can kind of see the trends. What are you guys planning on being prepared for?
One of the things that I wonder about is with the increased complexity of newer vehicles, if people aren't going to kind of flock to older vehicles for enthusiast builds even more. And that's where I see like the GMT 400 platform continuing to get, I guess, hotter. The GMT 800s are still a relatively simple vehicle.
I think the 800s were a peak GM truck. It's the right mix of creature comforts and modernity, I guess, without being so complex with all the computers and stuff. Like, it's sort of in that space. And the build quality of those trucks was phenomenally good. I think even better than the 900s.
And especially in the gas engines, the D-Maxes, it doesn't matter which generation it is. Injectors get expensive, and they're still good. I mean, we've run across a lot of 400,000-mile D-Max trucks, but geez, you pick up a 6.0 powered 05 GM truck. There isn't anything on that $2,000 won't make brand new and have a thing that's going to go a long ways. yeah, that's something that that we're kind of keeping an eye on is continue doing what we're doing, but better, moving through these platforms, because I think they're going to stay hot for quite a while, because there's all of the things that we talked about with, all the crash standards and messing with bumpers and sensors and
ADAS.
Emission stuff is harder and harder to deal with, and on for somebody that wants to work on something that's relatively simple in their garage. It's going to be old trucks, and I think they're just going to keep booming.
On that note, let's thank Mr. Stephen Watson for A, listening, and B, owning a really rad shop up there in Rifle, Colorado, Offroad Design. You can find them at offroaddesign.com.
And I'd like to personally thank you for making me your favorite podcast host.
Wait, why are you his favorite?
That was called the Presumptive Close, Lightning.
Oh. That's a dick move.
Well, it is a little sad to say that, what was it, 201 of your listeners, this is the top
Are you in review?
podcasts that you listen to.
Yeah.
I'm one of those.
Yes!
we appreciate you mightily, my friend, and I know you, myself, Lawson, Kevin Stearns, we've got some unfinished business to do out in the Mojave. So as soon as maybe in the new year, as soon as things kind of settle down a little bit, we need to get our trip planned, and hopefully I'll be able to get back on the trail with you soon enough.
Yeah, I want to. I still need to listen to the Billy Creech episode. I haven't got to it yet, but I'm anxious to hear about that one. And
I'm sorry,
maybe
who?
go visit that trail.
Desert Explorer.
That's the one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff on that you'll find pretty interesting. So continue to listen. We've got a lot of great guests such as yourself lined up, and we're excited about 24. We're just going to make sure that you can't listen to any other podcasts.
Stephen Watson,
All
everybody,
right.
come on.
Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you guys.
All right, turn your car on and get warm again.
Time to go home.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, Holman, I'm interested to hear how you like that Ranger that you spent some time in recently.
Does that mean we're doing a truck review?
Indeed.
Truck review. Yeah, rolling coal and dragging truck nuts.
Did Ford strap a set of truck nuts on the trailer hitch?
They did not. They did not.
So, Holman, in the last episode, you went through the features of the new Ranger, but you weren't allowed to talk about how it felt to drive, which I think you'll do now, correct?
Yeah, the last episode, I think the embargo had just lifted, and so I didn't get into a whole lot of details. And so we didn't go very deep. We talked about mostly Ranger Raptor, which, dude, by the way, so much fun to drive. It's funny because you go into the base Ranger, and we had XLTs and Lariat's Sport 4x4s with only the 2.3 liter, but that's still 270 horsepower with the 10-speed automatic. Again, I like those better than the GMs in terms of responsiveness. The Transit feel like it was hunting. Other than that, the electronic start-stop issue where there's some vibration that I caught a few times. Mm-hmm. It was very sporty, very responsive, felt great. Love that about it. Very quiet, and I really like the dash. The outside looks okay to me. It's just okay. It's still built on the same T6 platform that's been around since 2010. And most of this vehicle was engineered in Australia, while the powertrain was done here in the States. So I had a chance to drive the 4-cylinder. We didn't get a chance to drive the 2.7s, which is the upgraded engine, because they're late availability. And I thought, hey, even at altitude, great power. It's fine, totally adequate. Nobody is going to be bummed about that 2.3 in Ranger. It feels great. So I can only imagine, it's probably a 2 mile per gallon penalty, but moving up to that 2.7 liter V6 with the twin turbos is going to be pretty awesome for those as an upgrade engine. Nobody else is really doing an upgrade. They're doing you can get the higher output 4-cylinder, but you can't get a V6, right? And so the only ones with the V6 are going to be Nissan with the Frontier with the normally aspirated V6, or Ford with the 2.7, because Toyota walked away from it, GM walked away from it. And then, of course, there's the Ridgeline, if you consider that. Doesn't really count in this space, I don't think. It's a great feeling truck. I think it's a really great upgrade. I think if you like the current truck, you're going to like the new truck even better. It did have some fit and finish issues. Ours were pre-production, and there were a lot of just where the seams of the plastic on the interior kind of came together. The seat fabric felt a little cheaper. The leather seats were better. But again, I go back to...
What's funny is they have to... leather seats only have to have one panel in them that's actual leather.
Yeah, most cars
the rest
like
is
that.
all vinyl, yeah.
Which is fine. That's really not that big of a deal, and something that's going to get dirty and wiped off. But when you sit in it and you look at kind of there's a little bit of cost cutting here and there that you can tell. The Raptor's way better. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more money.
Do you see it in like the door panels? They just look cheap
I
and
love the
plastic
door
or
panels.
what?
I thought the door panels were great. They have these like shapes that are molded into them that are kind of funky and
Because usually that's where you see the cheapness of a truck. Yeah,
it's where the door panels, all the like the glove box meets the corner, meets the door. There's places like where the steering column snaps around the ignition that didn't quite line up 100%. Just that kind of stuff. It's just the little stuff that over time you'll catch and you'll be like, you know? And going back to the seats, they were fine, but they weren't Nissan Frontier zero gravity seats. To me, those seats are still the best. And I really want to take a Chevy Colorado and go back and forth between that and the Ranger, because it's been a while since I've driven the Colorado, and I've driven a lot of stuff since then. So I don't have a good reference point of what else is going on in the midsize category right now.
Could you get one?
Yeah, probably.
No, but like back to back at the same time?
Maybe. It just depends on scheduling. I'll refer to the Frontier mostly because that was the most recent midsize truck that I was in. And I feel like the Frontier's ergonomics are better.
How can I ask about your seating position? Because in the Frontier, you're sitting higher. You feel more like you're in a big truck.
Yeah, I mean, you feel like you're in a midsize truck. I mean, I don't know. The seating position...
The Ranger was fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
It didn't strike me. And then there's also this weird cap on top of the dashboard that looks like it should have been a cubby for like sunglasses or pens or something. Instead, they have this like cap on top that has a bunch of warning lights on it. So that just looks kind of chintzy. Like the dash looks nice, and then there's just this piece that looks like an afterthought. But overall, really nice to drive. I've got some Raptor video that I'll try and get up hopefully this next week or so on our truck show page of me taking around the muddy course. It was pretty cool. And I will say this, the steering was awesome in the Raptor. You can totally steer with the throttle, which was a ton of fun. Very responsive. I wish it had a little bit bigger tire. It's 33s. I would have loved to see a 34 or 35 on it to be, on par with the Chevys. Overall, its handling was great. Brakes felt great on either truck. It's only got about 10 inches of travel front and rear. I would have loved a little bit more travel in the Raptor. But and they let us jump it. We hucked them.
Really?
And it was
how
fun.
far?
I mean, I got a foot off the ground probably.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You didn't jump at the flat like our friend in the Raptor.
No, it was very
on the Hoonigan video.
It was a very controlled environment at the Ford Raptor Assault School, where they set you up with courses and instructors.
That's
and all
what it's
that kind
called,
of
the
stuff.
Assault School?
Raptor Assault.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So you get to take them on. So Bronco has their off-roadios. Ranger Raptor has Raptor Assault. I think you can take the big trucks out there. So if you buy one, you basically get a chance to go to these schools. And so we went to the one that was in outside of Salt Lake City. And overall, I thought it was a pretty good truck. I'm a little bit shy about the pricing on the non-Raptor. Again, I don't know the pricing on the Raptor yet, but it's
what?
It's a lot of coin, man.
Like it is.
Well, Lariat.
Can I guess?
No, Lariat 4x4, loaded. You're
touching 50.
You're touching 50.
Right.
I think you're on the other side of 50.
So then the
50 grand's
Raptor.
a lot.
So then the Raptor version is.
I don't know. They haven't announced it yet. I just said that.
Oh, I know you know though.
No, I don't know.
Oh, you really don't?
But like an AEV version of the Colorado Bison's 69. So Raptor's going to be somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And you look at what you paid for your TRX, and they're not that far apart, and you got a full-size truck.
So what does it weigh, do you know?
So the Ranger 4x4 comes in at 4415.
Okay.
And so there's a difference, obviously, between the Ranger Raptor and the Ranger itself. So the Ranger Raptor, 4415, and then that's going to get you 7,500 pounds of towing, whether it's a 4x2, 4x4, and both engines, and it gets you a maximum payload. The 4x4 is 1711, which is really respectable.
Yeah. Wow,
and because they made the Ranger wider, the shocks are on the outboard now, so they handle better and it handles loads better, having them outboard of the frame rails, which I think is pretty cool. So when you move over to the Ranger Raptor, obviously there's going to be more content on that, so it's going to be a little bit heavier. So the Ranger Raptor comes in at
I don't know, what is it?
5325.
Oh, that much weight.
Which is a lot more. I mean, you're almost in half-ton truck territory They're especially with the aluminum Ford F-150. So, and then the tow rating drops to 5,510 pounds. Still respectable.
Just because it's so much softer?
That and because it weighs so much more. So the gross weight rating obviously is going to change. And payload drops to 1,375, which is still pretty reasonable. Like, I think 1,375 is good. I think the AEV version of the Colorado is somewhere around 1,000 pounds of payload. But again, a little bit different because that one already has all the skid plates and the winch and the bumpers and the 35s and all the things that take away from.
It's got all the accoutrement.
Already has the accoutrement on it.
The accoutrement that you will need. Accoutrement!
And then one of the other things that I didn't love was, while there are hard buttons for climate controls on the bottom, a lot of stuff is buried in the screen. Like, there's a great mode controller, and the mode controller does all of your drive modes, and also it has the trailer backup assist, or pro trailer backup assist is what Ford calls it, on the knob on the center console. That's cool. Having that trailer helper on the midsize truck now, super cool. But there's a lot of things like turning your lockers on and off has to be done inside the screen, and I hate not having hard buttons because if that screen ever goes bad, you can't control your full
stuck.
rifles.
Yeah. No, why do you suppose they do it soft as opposed to? I mean, Ford guys are traditionally
because buttons cost money.
I know, but Ford owners have spoken time and time again. We need knobs and buttons.
Yeah, well, knobs and buttons cost money, and basically they, they're putting as much stuff in the screen as they think they can get away with. So there's still a volume control knob, which I appreciate, and there's still climate control buttons, which I appreciate. But some of the secondary controls, it would have been nice to have buttons. You go into the new Tacoma, and there's a lot of hard buttons in the new Tacoma, which I really like. Oh, and the cameras. You'd love the cameras. Cameras all around this thing. There's even the side views, and the screen is crystal
360?
clear. Yeah,
Okay.
and side and front and rear, all of it. And you can do different camera modes, and the screen is super, super high definition. So it looks awesome. So I did really like that. And then for those of you who are looking to get maybe into an XLT, you're looking right around 40,000, a little bit more than that. So, and that's with the 2.3. But again, once you load up, get a Lariat, get that 2.7 liter, you get 4-wheel drive. Again, you're in that 50,000 range, and man, that's a lot of coin.
I wonder the 2.3 to the 2.7. I mean, I wonder what the butt dyno would tell you between those two engines.
It's a significant change in both horsepower and torque.
I just feel like the 2.3. I know you say it feels good, but to me, it just feels too little for a truck. Even like the Duramax 3 liter, or the 2.8, for example, that they had the LWN, which was in the Colorado and the Canyon. That thing was just
the old diesel you're talking about.
Yeah, the diesel. It just. I guess that's why, because it was diesel, but it just felt anemic.
That was way less horsepower.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, it had more torque, but it was way less power. So if you're the 2.3, I mean, they have it in the Mustang. I mean, they have it in everything.
Yeah,
you can get everything in that engine. But the difference that you're looking at moving from a 2.3 to a 2.7 is fairly significant. You go from 270 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque to 315 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque.
You're right. That's a lot.
I mean, that thing, the 2.7 in a Ranger is going to be a screamer. So, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like I would hold out for the Tremor Ranger because you know it's coming.
Right.
With the 2.7. That thing would be just a blast.
So you don't need the full Raptor, and you get above the Lariat,
Raptor.
and you get all the towing of the Tremor and all that stuff.
What I want to see is if they do a Tremor model, which I'm sure they're going to do, I want to see how far away it is from a Raptor. Is it $10,000 cheaper? Can you just get better shocks and suspension, get your 35s on it, and then have a nearly as capable truck? I mean,
usually though, it's like 70% or 80% of the Raptor, but you don't have the wider fenders, you don't have the up travel,
the
things
fancy
like that.
shocks, things like that, right? So we'll see. The Raptor itself, I'm telling you, was an absolute joy to drive. I love the big Raptor, but the V6 version has always felt like it's tough to kind of balance that marble on the pencil tip of really having your foot in it to have the turbos lit, but not too much where it's overblowing everything. I felt like modulating the power delivery on the Ranger Raptor with the 3-liter V6 twin turbo that's in there was way easier. And again, it has paddles, a lot more tech inside. The cabin was way nicer. The Watts linkage in the back, because it's basically coil springs in the back versus leafs on the standard Ranger, just transformative in that truck. And I know that because it was engineered in Australia and whatever the constraints were down there, and they were making a global platform, they stopped at 33s. I still think a Ranger Raptor on 35s would be like just perfect. And again, I'd love to see like 11, 12 inches of travel. Not a whole lot more, but I'd like to see 10 or 20% more travel. It handled the jump great. We got to drive this muddy course in different modes to see how it was, Baja mode with all the nannies turned off or just regular off-road
Any
mode.
whoops?
We didn't get to encounter a whole lot of whoops. We did like this mountainous trail where we got to use the locker and stuff. But to be honest, it's stuff that is like kudos to Ford because they're usually really good about letting you push the limits of their trucks, usually in a controlled environment. But because this is like an owner's course for like novice drivers, I felt like
it was a little tame.
Yeah, it was tame because normally they would take us out in the wild and they would like, block off a piece of land that they rented from the government or something like that, and they would set up a cool course on a private ranch. This was at their school with the courses set up, and the dirt handling track and like the Baja track were just an incredible amount of fun to drive. But the mountain course that was more like a trail, it was just a trail. It wasn't hardcore. It wasn't like anything as hard as we did with GMC up in Montana or what we did with Chevy with the Bisons out in Johnson Valley. So while you got a sense for the truck, you
didn't get to push it. What is like 6/10 the way?
Yeah, I mean we were probably at 6/10. We definitely didn't get to do like 9/10 with it, and you could tell that ground clearance was a little bit of a liability just from bottoming out on the belly. But Ford's done a really good job of making a really good approach angle and departure angle on this particular truck. So from that standpoint, at least it feels like, you're not, you can nose up to something and get up on top of it. The approach angle on the Ranger Raptor is fairly impressive, 33 degrees, while the departure angle is 26.4 and breakover is 24.2. But minimum running ground clearance is 10.7. And then just to let you know sort of how that compares with the Chevy Colorado. So a ZR2, so non-Bison, has a 10.7-inch ground clearance, so comparable to the Ranger Raptor, but the Bison on 35s, 12.2.
Yeah, that's pretty major.
You can drive over a ruler,
yeah.
Right? Like that's a big deal. And then the approach angle on the ZR2 Bison is 38.2 degrees. So that's significant. The departure angle is 26.0 and breakover angle is 26.9 on the ZR2 Bison with 35s. So you can see how that is fairly different. The ZR2 Bison comes in at 52.65, so not too far off of curb weight. So I think they're pretty comparable. Although max payload is 1050 with the Bison versus the 1300 in the Raptor, and towing's a little bit more in the ZR2 Bison at 5,500 pounds. So just if you guys were curious about where Chevy and Ford kind of come out in the numbers.
How similar or dissimilar are the buyers between the Ranger Raptor and the Chevy Colorado Bison? Meaning, let me tell you what I think, and I'm sure you'll think I'm wrong. I think that the Bison owner is more of the showy driver. It's more of a daily, and he'll use it occasionally. The Ranger Raptor guy is going to huck it.
I think you're the opposite.
Really?
I don't think they know yet because both trucks are brand new. So who knows what the buyers are? But the Raptor, I think, is more flashy, and I think the Bison's more catering toward the overland crowd.
Oh, okay.
Raptor's going after the Baja guy.
So you're not, but the overland thing is kind of like a lot of those guys are showy. They camp and all that
stuff. The
Toyota
guys are for sure.
The Toyota guys.
Have you seen
sure.
the ZR2 Bison guys? Those guys are using those trucks.
Are they?
They're absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look out there, and then Ranger Raptor's never been in the United States, so who knows what it's going to be. So I don't know. I think the cool thing is that Chevy and Ford both offer incredibly similar vehicles. I also want to see how the Raptor is going to compare to like a Toyota Trailhunter, which is kind of going after that, or the TRD Pro. Really, the Trailhunter feels like it's more ZR2, and the TRD Pro is more Raptor. So it'll be nice to have all these trucks, and then Frontier gets redesigned coming up. Gets a mid-cycle refresh. So, that should keep it in the conversation as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the mid-size truck market, and it's an exciting place to be right now.
Well, Holman, thank you for that truck review.
Truck review. Yeah. Rolling coal and dragging truck nuts.
All right, now it's time for you to smother me in email.
You email? Yeah. I email. Do it. We email. That's right. Everybody email. Type it up. You email. Proofread. I email. Send it. We email. Click it. Everybody email.
So I printed these emails out, and our new printer
Oh my God!
resized it to a point that Lightning will not be able to read this text. And
I'm wearing my glasses.
Are you wearing your magnifying specs?
Holy crap. Do you guys out there have a microscope that I can borrow? Damn.
It's not that small.
It's freaking 3-point.
Dude, I can read it.
I
have to read all the emails in
I
this
can
segment?
read it. It's just
All right.
so
Well,
ridiculous.
Less complaining, more reading, sir.
All right. Frontier sighting, I think this says.
Would you just
From
read
Troy-
the emails?
All right. I took these pics on the way to work yesterday. I seen quite a number of Frontiers.
Oh, it was just for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. He's underlined and bolded.
Who is that from? You didn't even say who it was from.
It's from Troy Brick.
So you can read just fine.
Troy, seriously, I know you're being funny, but don't perpetuate I seen. It's I have seen or I saw, not I seen. I've seen quite a number of Frontiers on the road, and there are a lot of used fleet vehicles. One of our area police departments uses quite a few of them. I look forward to getting a sticker sometime in the not too distant future if Lightning doesn't forget. I've listened to every single episode, and Holman read my email. Lightning played the I'm sorry drop to my wife on season 1, episode 255, and the day I heard you read my email
But
was
who's
a
counting?
terrible day. Hold on, check this out. He says, the day I heard you read my email was a terrible day until I got into my truck after work. The podcast started where I had left off that morning, and Holman started reading my email. My mind was somewhere else, and I suddenly came back to reality thinking, that sounds like my email. Rewound, if that still is a phrase, maybe backed up a little better, to listen to the entire thing again. I've replayed that episode to many, many people. Thank you for making my day much better. I feel that the podcast has improved since you have entered season 2. Always been my favorite podcast. The quality is second to none. That's from Troy Brick in Boone, Iowa.
All right, got this message that says, what about small diesels from Dennis Durrell? And
What about 'em?
He says, famous bros. You've shed some really good light on the merits of going with a gasser unless you really need the big diesel power for regular use. However, what is your opinion on the small displacement diesels versus gas? For example, on the Yukon XL Denali, the choice would be the 3-liter Duramax or the 6.2 gas. The Duramax has a significant advantage in both economy and range. However, I tend to keep vehicles for over 100,000 miles, and I'm a bit concerned about EGR fouling, DEF problems, etc. With the 2500, 3500, the gap between the L8T and the L5P isn't as much as it is between the 3-liter LZO and the 6.2-liter L87. Further, unlike the 2500, 3500, the 3-liter is a cost savings compared to the 6.2, at least at MSRP. I feel like the 6.2 would stand a better chance of getting me past 100K without spending time in the shop, but I really want the 3-liter for economy and range. Set the record straight, will ya? Dennis Durrell. He says, P.S., you guys really do sound alike. Even after a year's worth of shows, it's hard to tell the difference unless Lightberg laughs. Keep delivering the great weekly podcast and 5 stars.
5-star review! 5-star!
And that was Holman that read your email.
The answer to your question is, first off, did he say how long he planned to keep it?
Over 100,000 miles.
3-liter diesel Duramax.
I'm going to
all
go
day
gas.
long. Nope.
I think the gas diesels suffer from the exact same problems as the big diesel. The GM is a much newer design, and it's probably the best out of the light-duty diesels that's left out there. Oh, wait, it's the only one. And I would say that you still have the same issues of having to have DEF. You have the same issues of expensive services. Yes, you'll make up some of that in fuel economy, except that diesel, at least where we are, is almost 50 cents to 75 cents more than premium per gallon.
But it's not that way everywhere.
That's why I just said where we are. And the other thing is that you'll have the exact same issues of being in regen and things like that. So if you're not driving that on a decent amount of time, 30 minutes, 45 minutes every day, and you're doing short trips to drop the kids off at school, you're going to have issues with it.
And
100%.
that's not a euphemism, but it's not as bad as the L5P, as the big 6.6. It's just not as bad. So guys are making shorter trips. You can do that in the 3-liter. Look, I wish we had parts for the 3-liter. We don't. We didn't see that one coming. We thought it was just going to go the way of the 2.8. But it has been a huge success, and I'm on all the 3-liter groups. GM's got a hit on their hands, and they're producing more than 30,000 of them a year. We thought they were going to do 15, so they've more than doubled the production.
But it also hasn't been
I like
out
it.
as long as the other ones.
It's
so
true.
The
but
jury's still out on long-term durability. Now, the engine itself seems to be fine as far as durability, but let's see what happens with the DPF and the DEF system and the EGR once we get another. We're not even to 5 years yet on that engine.
Maybe came
6?
out in 20, I believe, right? So you had the
So 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Right. So we're not that far along to know what these high mileage ones are like. And the ones that are hitting high mileage now probably have less issues because if you're already hitting high mileage, it means you're using it all the time. You're towing, you're driving cross country, you're using whatever. So
but if you're using it a lot, then you're not going to run into those clogging issues either.
I understand that.
You're going to work them like they're supposed to be worked.
I understand that. And that's what I'm saying is we still don't know how this is going to respond to those short trips because those short trip trucks aren't at a higher mileage yet. It's only been 4 years. The things that are at a higher mileage now are things that are being used. So everything's getting blown out. You're doing regen. It's doing all the stuff, right? All the people that are using it for a quick, short run to school or to the grocery store or those over and over and over again don't have that high mileage. So we don't know what that looks like yet. That's what I'm saying.
Do we know his use case? We don't really.
We don't really know his use case. All I'm going to say is if you want to hit 150,000 miles, go with the tried and true V8 gas engine. Lightning thinks you should go with the Duramax.
I'm still leaning at the 3.0. I'm still leaning towards the 3.0. This one's called Frontier Spotting from Chad. It looks like he's in Newfoundland, which is cool.
Oh, dude, Chad, you have a problem up there in Newfoundland. Yes.
Stop with the dogs.
I've been to Newfoundland, and there's no freaking Newfoundland dogs. There's Chihuahuas, and there's Pit Bulls, and there's Labradors.
Stop it.
Like, I would expect Labradors to be from Labrador, but there's no freaking Newfies. I wanted to go to Newfoundland, and I wanted there to be big, giant, hairy Newfies, and I didn't see one while I was there. And I've been screeched in, and I still didn't see a Newfie, and I bit the head off a herring, and it's BS. So read his dumb letter and tell him that I have a problem with Newfoundland. Although I did go to a town called Dildo. That's a true story.
Chad says, hey guys, managed to spot this one at my local dealership. Sharp looking truck. Trade the pick for a sticker? Deal. Yes, I will trade the bright red Nissan Frontier for a sticker. Thank you very much. If you're interested in getting a Truck Show Podcast sticker, simply take a photograph of a Nissan Frontier from the cab of your truck.
I got an email here from our friend Trevor Nemero. It says, new Tundra and Tacoma? So I don't understand. If the new Tacoma and Tundra share the same chassis, is the Tundra light-duty half-ton or is the Tacoma heavy-duty midsize? Seems odd to be sharing the underbits between two different class trucks. It happens all the time, my friend. Ford F-250 and 350, Chevy 2500, 3500, Ram 2500, 3500, Nissan Frontier, Nissan Titan. I mean, we could go down the line. The chassis are not the same. The platform is the same. And what that means is that the tooling, the things that the hard points of where things connect to the chassis, suspension, and things like that are the same between the trucks. But things that attach to it, such as control arms and axles and things like that, will be upsized. Even bracketry, sometimes the chassis itself, and I'm not 100% sure in the case of the Toyota, but typically what happens is you might have thicker metal on the heavier duty vehicle and a deeper drawn frame rail. Also, on these modular platforms that a lot of companies are going to, and this is common throughout the industry, you can change track width and you can also change wheelbase. And you basically, the hard points stay the same, but you can put in different cross members or more cross members. You can widen the frame rails, put a wider body on top of it. So all those things are taken into account, but being a modular platform, again, they're not the same chassis. The chassis would mean like a Tundra could bolt to a Tacoma, and if it could, it wouldn't be a Tacoma, it would be a Tundra. But on the platform itself, there's a lot of part sharing and component sharing. Like they might have the same wheel bearings, they might have the same half shafts, they might have the same motor mounts, they might have the same mounting points, things like that. But guess what? Components will be upsized. Gas tank may be bigger. Room is measurements are changed to accommodate a roomier cab. All those types of things. So that's basically a Cliff Notes version of how that works in the automotive industry. Sharing a platform does not necessarily mean that one is a heavier duty vehicle, one's a lighter duty vehicle. They can be both with different changes made to the chassis.
That's funny. I don't recall asking for a really boring story. My God. Don't you understand no one cares?
I think Trevor cares.
I'm guessing Jay has considered retractable bollards from RB. I don't know what bollards are.
Those are the things that if you go to a military base or an airport or whatever.
Oh, they stick out of the ground.
Yeah, they stick out. And the retractable ones go underground. So, like, you could have your driveway flat. And then when you park your TRX, you have the bollards pop up, and then they can't pull it out of your driveway.
I would totally do that if I had a spare $100,000. Lightning.
Yeah, I don't think they're that much.
As I've heard the various installments of your TRX anti-thievery saga, the first thing I thought of was 3 of those retractable bollards posts, one between the truck and the road and one on each side, assuming you put one end of the truck up against the garage door.
That's actually a great point.
He says, I assume you've already considered that.
No, he hasn't.
No.
But wait, what about what about one of those low rolling wrought iron fences?
I have considered that because I could do that in my front yard.
Our buddy makes wrought iron fencing. I bet he could make one for you.
Who's our buddy? You're talking about Eric from Amp
Yeah,
Research?
Eric Baja. He make wrought iron?
It's funny because yes, he does. And it's funny, as tight as I am with Eric, I don't think he'd do it for free.
Who said for free?
I don't have
Why
the
are you
money
assuming
to
for free?
I don't have the cash to build a 20, 30-foot
Why?
long
Because
slider.
you had to buy a new rear window?
I mean, I did have. I mean, it was only $500 for the deductible, but that's I've thought of that. I don't know if that would keep them. Wouldn't they just bust the lock and cut the chain and slide it over?
Dude, that's a lot of work. Make it so pins have to go in it. There's not a lock.
When we talked to John Tang from Igla, he talked about how they moved the dudes
way easier to move a car than it is to move
out to get the TRX.
Way easier to move a vehicle out of the way than it is to move bollards or a fence.
I have thought about the fence. Hey, listen, if you do fence work and you do call me up, brother.
I
got you. Lightning at truckshowpodcast.com.
Did you really just ask a listener to make a free fence for you?
No, I'll pay some.
All right. Well, we got Alden Lyric says, stickers. Ha ha. I laugh all the time at the people complaining of not getting stickers. I've been listening and emailing since the days of quote unquote free t-shirts. The new listeners don't know it's a running joke about getting items sent for an email. You all are my number one podcast that I listen to. Look forward to the next download. XL shirt whenever you send it. And that's our friend Alden, who's been listening since almost day one.
THAKYOU. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for writing to Mr. Oh, you got another one?
Got one more?
Oh, I didn't know.
You trying to get out of here?
I didn't see a piece of paper on your laptop.
All right, one more called Tundras from Chad Colburn. He says, hey, dudes, love the show and longtime listener, first-time emailer. But heard
First-time listener!
But heard in the latest show the topic of sliding rear windows, and you guys said the first-generation Tundra went all the way down. But, in fact, every gen Crewmax Tundra has a power up and down rear window, one of the best features. And I do agree with the typical slider never being used, as I never used it in my previous Tacoma. I do use the power down in the Tundra all the time. Keep up the great job on the podcast. And that's Chad Colborn says, P.S., this info must be worth a sticker. You know, Chad, it might be, but you didn't leave us an address. Sorry.
Oh, damn, that is a harsh toke. All right, he is Holman at truckshowpodcast.com. I'm Lightning at truckshowpodcast.com, or you can hit the general email inbox at truckshowpodcast@gmail.com.
The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Oh, oh.
I just like the
music.
The music. After all these years, I still think it's cool.
We ruin it.
Now, I remember
single show we talk over it.
We ruin it for just doing what we do. I remember the first time at K-Rock, the very first show where we did our jingle music, and it was like, hey, is this thing real? It's kind of cool. The old studio that's no longer there.
Are you just reminiscing about 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago of starting the show?
Maybe like 7 now, isn't it? Is it going on 7? Going on 6? I don't know. Something like that. 2018? So
All right.
A lot of shows.
All right, listen, we want to thank Nissan for making this show possible. We're bulking up this afternoon and this evening. We're recording 35 episodes in advance because Holman is going on a world tour here. He's going to go do Jeeps out in the Mojave. He's going to go Jeeps up in Utah. He's going to drive Jeeps through the Sahara. He's going to what are you doing?
Driving Jeeps through the Sahara?
I'm just saying. I feel like you're going to be gone for the next 6 months.
Dude, I've got so much trouble. I'm heading out to Eastern Jeep Safari, so I'll be out there for a week. And then doing a deal with Jeep Jamboree USA to pre-run a week-long desert trip. And then also heading to the middle of the country with my dad, my oldest, to see the eclipse in Middle America.
Yeah, so that's weird.
Going out to Oklahoma possibly to run a booth for an aftermarket company in September at a Overland show.
Okay, well, you don't have to give me the whole year. I meant like because we're recording a couple episodes right now. So anyway,
we got a lot.
Yep.
Okay. You guys need to leave us reviews, please. Do it on Facebook, on Spotify, or on Apple Podcasts. Hit us up on the email, Holman@truckshowpodcast.com, lightning@truckshowpodcast.com, or truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget about the 5-star hotline, 657-205-6105.
5-star
hotline. Head over to truckshowpodcast.com where you can check out the latest in events and also discount codes for featured products. And please follow us on social at Truck Show Podcast. Dave Graham continues to kill it for us. Did you see this week's was pretty hilarious.
Which one?
Well,
did he chop our heads off and
put them on different bodies and stuff? Yeah, those are always fun. And then also you want to follow us at Sean P. Holman, at LBC Lightning, and please, guys, we still need some Know Your Notes. So send them our way, and we will be happy to guess wrong, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
That is where you record the exhaust note and you send it to us in the form of an email, the audio attachment, or you leave it on the 5-star hotline, and we do a miserable job guessing what it is.
Shout out to our good friend Stephen Watson for hanging out with us for a bit. And if you are in the market for a brand new truck with a great warranty, durable, dependable, and screwed together really well, you want to go to your local Nissan dealer where you can check out the Nissan Frontier, the Nissan Titan, or the Nissan Titan XD. The Titans have the industry's best 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and those Nissans have the best seats in the industry. So once again, head on down to your local Nissan dealer or build a price at nissanusa.com.
And if the headers in your old 91 to 91 Jeep or 2000 to 2006 Jeep suck and they're cracked and they're making strange noises, it's time to upgrade to a brand new set of Banks stainless steel headers. Head over to bankspower.com, type in your year, make, and model, and get a nice set of headers that will purr and add 20 horsepower under that Jeep hood. Laters!
Thanks for watching, and remember, everything matters.
The Truck Show Podcast is a production of Truck Famous LLC. This podcast was created by Sean Holman and Jay Tillis with production elements by DJ Omar Khan. If you like what you've heard, please open your Apple Podcast or Spotify app and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're a fan, there's no better way to show your support than by patronizing our sponsors. Some vehicles may have been harmed during the making of this podcast.